So I came up with this vision, like I explained, right? And it sounded all great, but then I said, okay, so what's my first step here? This is a big vision, right?
Condense it.
So I sat on my computer, the one that's right here on my right side. I made a playlist in iTunes called Songs of Inspiration. And I put my favorite 25 songs from this era. At first I said to myself, let me put them in chronological order. So they all fell between 1978 and 1982. So I defined a very specific 5-year time span. That was by accident. Then I looked at the artists. Some of the artists on the list were Michael Jackson, Earth, Wind & Fire, Kool and the Gang, Chic, Shaka Khan, Rufus, Diana Ross, Rick James, who you mentioned, and many others. And I said, how do I get my songs to sound like these songs? More importantly, how do I get them to feel like these songs? So the next step that I conceived was I made a list of every musician who played on every one of the songs. Drummer, bass player, guitar player, horn players. I made 25 lists. Some lists took me 5 minutes, some lists actually took me 5 weeks. The more famous the song, the bigger hit of a song, the easier to find this information. Some of them were not as big of hits. After I made the 25 list, I saw something very interesting. I saw the same names of musicians repeating over and over. And it became very clear that the producers and the recording artists of the greatest songs of this era were essentially recruiting the same session musicians. These men, some of whom I knew of and some whom I did not, were clearly the architects of the sound. They were the men behind the music. So I said to myself, in order for me to achieve my mission here, I need to go to the source.
Yeah.
So over the past 4 years, I reunited 22 of the most legendary, renowned, iconic musicians of the late 70s and early 80s for the first time in one room to channel for the first time in one room in over 30 years, to channel their definitive sound with no samples, no covers, no interpolations, no machines. So all the original members of Earth, Wind & Fire are playing on my album. All the original members of Kool and the Gang, of Chic, all the musicians who played on Off the Wall and Thriller from Michael and Quincy. And you can see all these names on my website or, on any of my social media assets. But after I redefined the sound and captured the spirit and energy of this music, I said, now I need new voices to bring this music to a new generation. And these voices need to represent not only my generation, but all genres of music from my generation. R&B, electronic, pop, rock, everything. All voices, all kinds of people coming together under one sound. So over the past 4 years, I put together a list of the most eclectic and renowned recording artists of my generation to write and record original songs to this music. And that list of artists includes John Legend, Estelle, Kelly Rowland, Melanie Fiona, Mary J. Blige, Chromeo, Passion Pit, CeeLo, Neo, Robin Thicke, Jessie J, R. Kelly, and Usher.
Steve, Passion Pit, that one I wasn't expecting, but that's dope though.
Well, but you could have expected it, because what I set out to do is to bring together all genres of music.
True.
And I looked at my favorite rock and roll artists, and I saw Passion Pit, and I looked at my favorite electronic artist, and I said, what, Chromeo really is inspired by much of the same, music that I am. And I looked at the pop world, not only in America, but in the UK and beyond. And I said, Jessie J, one of the biggest pop stars in the UK, is such a soulful singer. I just know she would be able to connect to this and bring this to life. And the amazing thing I found was that the people who you least expect like the Passion Pit, and I get that all the time.
Yeah.
I get, oh my God, Passion Pit on that album? Get that all the time. And what was such an amazing part of this process was that you'd be in the studio with Passion Pit, and I play this music for Michael, who's the singer of Passion Pit, and immediately he tells me this is the kind of music that he listens to. This is what's on his iPod. This is what inspires him. And I heard that from Jessie J and from Chromeo and from the people who you wouldn't have expected. And I necessarily. And it just proved my point as I went along to myself how universal this music is, and how much this music from this era is in all of the music we hear today. And it was my goal to bring the true essence of not only the sound but the feeling, that infectious feeling that gets in every little kid, to the point where my 6-year where I have a nephew who's 6 years old, and I go to my sister's house and I put my iPod in or my iPhone, and he literally responds to half of the songs that were on that list. He knows them, or they're just ingrained in us all, you know. And that's really the beauty of these songs, and that's really the beauty that I tried to capture.
And, you know, kind of a great thing too, because when it comes to Nile Rodgers, I don't know if you got a chance this past year, about a month or so ago, to see the Brit Awards, and
I did see it.
The passion that I can tell, you know, when the labor of love with the project, the album, the single, and Pharrell performs. Nile's out there too, and the host is kind of communicating with Pharrell, and you know, Pharrell saying, by the way, this is Nile Rodgers, give this man respect. And it's a dope thing. I'm sure he had a, you know, kick, you know, revisiting music and in a capacity where, you know, live music, and it's not as synthesized, but, you know, music of our genre at this given moment is kind of put together in what you're putting together with this current project. So it's a dope thing to see. But a lot of respect to Nile himself. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, and it's great to hear someone like you, you know, talking about you know, this era of music, and you know, recognizing you know, the founders of it, really, the men behind the music. And it was so thrilling to get in the studio with all the musicians who worked on my album. It has been a long time since they've been in the studio to create new music of this sound.
Sure.
Of course, Earth, Wind & Fire still on the road, selling out arenas. Nile Rodgers and Chic selling out arenas. Kool and the Gang selling out arenas. And then there are the other musicians on my album who are not recording artists, who are not necessarily you know, the names you know. But for all of them, one thing holds true, and they don't make this kind of music nearly as much as they used to, if at all. These guys, the greatest musicians of that era, used to go from one studio to the next, literally 10 sessions a day. This was all they did. And it's very rare these days that young artists, you know, call in, you know, session musicians to bring, you know, live musicianship. It's not existent, but it becomes more and more rare. And, you know, I always like to make the point, I didn't recruit musicians to say I recruited them.
Yeah.
I didn't recruit these iconic, you know, men and women to come to the studio with me so I could film it and, you know, put together a nice, you know, behind-the-scenes clip, which you can see on youtube.com/DJ Cassidy.
Right.
Because I filmed every minute of the past 4 years. But that wasn't the goal.
Yeah.
That was a byproduct. The goal here was to make music that made me feel like the songs of this era, which I believe to be the greatest dance records of that era. I wanted of all time, and I set out to make new songs that made me feel like these songs. Throughout my whole career, I've watched people react. I've watched people move. I've watched people dance. And I've seen one thing in common no matter where I went, and it was that the records of this era really touched everyone. And I wanted to pinpoint the ingredients of those records and put those ingredients back in a pot with our greatest artists from today and create something new. And that's what I did.
There it is.